Okay, so I've got my basic box set up again, which is going to be our sash panel. And I'll just quickly show you, if you're in the family with the sash panel families all loaded into it, it's good to remember that you can always select one of those, click Edit Family, and that will take us straight back to the family with the sash. And so then, I'm just going to quickly check here. So the sides, I'm just going to make the same size for now, but in reality they would be different. But to keep it simple, I'll just make them all 40mm. So I'm going to make a void. And again, it's on the Create tab. Obviously, you've got all the extrusion, another solids button, and then just maybe you've got the void forms button where you can get void extrusion. And I'm going to go back to the Create tab, and you can see there that I can make reference planes while I'm making the extrusion, which sometimes can be helpful. So I can just draw a reference plane either side. You don't really need this, but it doesn't hurt for you to see this. So I'm going to draw a dimension now from the reference planes at the edge to the one I've just made, and same on the other side. So you can all guess the next step, which is just going to be to make those dimensions both the same, both 40mm. And then lock them. And now I'm going to draw a void, just making a rectangle that snaps to those two reference planes. And I can lock them both sides. I'm not too worried about the other edges there. Might make this one a little bit bigger, but I'm not going to get a wall any deeper than that. And my window frame is locked to be smaller than that anyway, so that should be more than enough for the void, or big enough for the void to ever need to deal with. So I've set the sides, and now I want to finish that void. And then in the elevation view, I'm going to basically do the same thing you did to set the height. I'm going to draw a reference plane at the bottom and the top. Like I said, I'm just going to make them all 40mm for now. Later, when we look at maybe making two variations on this family, so we've got one that will be for the bottoms and one for the tops, then maybe we'll look at changing these sizes a little bit, but again for now, just make them 40mm by drawing a dimension first, and then adjusting the size, making it 40, before then locking the dimensions, and then stretching the void so that it snaps at the top and the bottom to the reference plane. And what do you think you'd do next? Oh yeah, that'd be the next thing to model, but before I do that, I'm going to flex it to make sure it's working up to that point. I know it's tempting. I sometimes would just go straight ahead and model the next bit, but I've been bitten too many times and had things fall apart when you think it's all working perfectly. So again, the height here is the main thing to test, but I will also check the width. Looks pretty good. So back into the, I'm going to go to the elevation to do the next bit. And so here, we've got a slightly complex pattern to draw really, but I'm going to cheat a little bit. So if you remember how I set out the panels, I was pretty careful to make sure that the spacing for those was exactly right. So remember I did the equals for the three panels by setting out an extra reference plane on the sides. And I did that because I wanted the sash, or I knew that the sash would need to be exactly that size to fit in. And I wanted the sash panels to all be equal, of course. So I needed to get that right. But here, I don't need to be as careful. So as long as these are roughly equals, I'm not that concerned if they're not exactly equal, mainly because I don't have to put anything else inside them that has to be the same size. Okay, so the way I'm going to set this out, I'm going to be a little bit more rough, and you'll see what that means as I draw it. So I'm going to make some reference planes, which you can probably guess are going to divide this up into thirds. So I'm going to draw an equals from the side of the panel there, and it's a shame it's not showing my reference planes. I thought it would, considering I drew them. Oh no, I drew them in the other family, that's why it won't show them. That's okay, I can just dimension from the side to the reference plane, to the other reference plane, to the other side, and then equals it. Okay, so I'll draw the extrusion, I'm sorry. So that's just going to be done using the line tool, maybe. I'll draw it with fairly rough layout to begin with. Yep, that'll do. Okay, so before I draw any more, I'm going to do another reference plane to divide it top and bottom. This one, again, can just be measured from the edge of the frame as well. So, and here I do have the reference planes, so I'll choose those instead. Equals for that one. And now I'm going to set the dimension, sorry, for this glazing bar from that reference plane. So drawing two dimensions in, and I'll make that scale a bit smaller so you can see. Okay, so they're both 30mm from this centre line. I'm going to make them, well, how big do you think a glazing bar is going to be? One of these pieces? 15mm? 20mm at most, maybe? Yeah, 20 might look better. 15 is probably closer to reality, but yeah, 20 to make them come up properly, you know, drawings might be better. So, so then 10mm top and bottom. Okay, so we fix the position of these lines when the window changes size, or when the sash changes size, so then I can lock both of those. Now I'm going to mirror these two lines using mirror pick axis and just flip them over, and then I can draw in dimensions to set them out from the centre line there from the reference plane, and again make them 10mm. Right, and then same unfortunately has to be done for the top because there's separate lines. Right, and so again 10mm. I know it seems a bit tedious, but imagine if you had to do it for 100 windows instead of just doing it for the one. Okay, and so then I need a line which I'll just draw between those two endpoints, and it'll give me the option to lock it. Okay, so then I'd need to copy all of those lines, and I'll get these two lines here using Control, copy, and I can, with any luck, just snap to the reference plane. Yep, it's telling me that I might have some extra edges in there. We'll fix that in a second. Have you seen these issues when it tries to join things automatically for you? Revit gets a bit carried away. Okay, so there's lots of different ways you could do this. You don't have to do it exactly the same as me, but when you see the finished product, maybe that'll give you a good idea of all the things you need to think about. And well, here it's gone and measured from the bottom line, so that's going to be 20. It's fun when Revit does this. Okay, so that's just got to be trimmed. And here So that's going to show you enough so that you can at least see why it's not set out as accurately as the frame was. Can you see how these would be different sizes? This panel here would be different to this one. Because if you look at this one, we'll look at this one first actually. I've got the edge there coming in 10 mil from each side. But on this side, it's not coming in 10 mil on that side. So that's why this one will be slightly bigger. And also, as you do these things, you need to keep checking your constraints. So I've got to draw dimensions in for this one. All I should need to do with those is lock them. And then the same for the bottom. Which one have I missed? What are the pair of lines I missed? Exactly, these two in the middle. That's good. So yeah, so these, again, just need another dimension over to one side. And then with any luck I can copy those two lines across. Again, it's trying to be too clever and keep things joined to each other. So I'm just giving you too much trouble. It's sometimes easier just to draw in new lines. So if I'd just drawn new lines from the endpoints here, it might have been easier. And that's always going to work. And it often works well if you just draw the lines you want fairly roughly and then come back and put in all the dimensions afterwards. Okay, so that looks pretty good, and I will finish that. And then I'm going to show you the one last big trick. The glass is easy. So once this is done, the glass is one extrusion that is easier even than the one you did at the beginning. So the last big trick here is how to get this centered inside this panel. There's an easy way of doing it without using any parameters or anything. Just in properties, you can see here we've got extrusion start and extrusion end. So I'm going to make this -10 and 10. So it starts at -10. So remember, our plane is this center line here. That's the plane this extrusion is hosted by, or the plane it sits on. And so if I make the start -10, it'll go below that plane, in other words, to one side of it in plan, and above in elevation, but again in plan it would be 10 mil this way. So it's 10 mil either side, because I've made it -10 and 10. So that should always stay centered without any parameters or anything. So I'm going to save that, load it into my family, override existing version, not the bottom option, just the top one is all I need there. And it's telling me constraints are not satisfied, got to remove them. And it can't make that one, so I've got to put it in again. This happens, unfortunately. So I've got to go and put that in again. That's why I was saying don't worry too much about loading it. At this point, it's good to try it just for the experience, but when you do a lot of extra parameters, and actually it might have even been because there were issues with my constraints, so I'll just load it and make sure it's working. But it's not unusual to have this. Okay, let's just try that again. Still not loading. Oh yeah, so, okay, so I'll just come back in here to test those parameters, so I'll just try that. Ah, here we go. That's why it's not working. Okay, so I'll just show you this little thing. It's one of these annoying things that does happen, and so you might remember I made reference planes for the side of my void, but I made them in the wrong place. So what I'm going to do now is make a reference plane in the plan view that's going to set out the dimension. And so you probably notice me locking things to reference planes as much as I can, and this is the reason, really. So again, make that 40. Okay, so I just have to fix the dimensions there and lock them or align them with the reference plane. And do all those dimensions again. Okay, so yeah, there was someone in third year last year who had a big warehouse building to do with windows just like this, and took a bit of setting up. She was actually a bit worried that she wasn't going to finish in time like everyone else was, because a lot of people had different projects where they could just do the modelling directly, but she still went ahead and made the families and spent a couple of weeks testing all the parameters. Once she got that working, then she could have all of these, literally a couple of hundred windows set out and then make adjustments and be pretty confident that they were going to work. So I've just adjusted the way those parameters work, mainly making sure that I've got a reference plane to set an edge where there are any problems. That's usually the reason you'll have problems. So now, there we go. Yeah? Yeah, that's right. You've got to always check those, but you really need to check all the parameters that you have. Another mistake people make is making too many parameters. So a lot of people will think, well, I can make the width and the height adjustable, so why don't I also make the window jamb size adjustable and the glass thickness adjustable, because I might want those different sizes. But that's probably pushing it too far. You can definitely get them to work if you push it, but it's hard. And really, how often do you need to have a different thickness of glass or window jamb? It's not as important as the size, the overall window size. So that's all looking good, except that my void isn't following it now for the width, but that's an easy one to go and align with the reference planes now. And again, this hopefully will make it clearer why you need to test it as you go. Seems like one of those things that you just get forced to do at first, but then you realise again, when you do what I did and load it in without fully testing it, that it can create errors. So there we are, that's working. And then I'll load it back in this time and see. Bingo. So that's looking good. And I'll just test that width particularly. So 3800, I think, was roughly the width we need. Wow, there we are. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the formula for the, yeah, so I'll leave it up there. So that's it, that's the formula. They're the two. There's only those two formulas. So I'll leave those up there if you want to have a look at those.